Chances are you click this link for two reasons. One, to immediately pause the video and comment what an idiot I am for having such an opinion, and should therefore kill myself. Or two, you're here because you want to listen to what I have to say. There are many films throughout the years that have defined a generation and left an imprint on society as a whole. Films like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, The Matrix, Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe have left their mark on the pop culture world, and for some movies, have even left their mark in our hearts. What is often overlooked are the movies that spoke truth to an unwanting audience. Movies like Demolition Man, which spoke to the end of the 80s action hero, while predicting a future without masculine influence, and even getting some bonus guesses correct, such as Zoom meetings. Or Idiocracy, a film that predicted a world of stupidity shaped by out-of-control consumerism and a continued dumbing down of language. What these two films have in common is that they were not initially well received, but then vindicated through time, and I believe The Matrix 4 will do the same. If you saw Spider-Man No Way Home first, then your perspective towards The Matrix was likely soured due to reasons you might not have initially realized. This isn't to say you're stupid or anything like that. It's one of those things you may not have picked up on initially, but as Harry Plinkett would say, you're brain dead. Spider-Man No Way Home did what the nostalgia era has failed to do this entire time, and that's apply nostalgia properly. Past shows and films like Stranger Things ruined their own formula after one season. Others have done reboots and sequels no one asked for. Enter Matrix 4. A movie that walks in, drops its pants, and takes an overdue dump on nostalgia. Yes, I do believe the message of The Matrix was that it is time to move on from nostalgia. Alright, thanks for watching. Obligatory like and subscribe remark. Until next time. Okay, I'm joking. Of course I'll do some in-depth analysis. As I mentioned, if you saw No Way Home first, The Matrix was going to come off as less than stellar. And no, not because of the cheap shortcuts taken with some of the action and visuals. While those add to the problems of The Matrix 4, they aren't the focus of this review. Spider-Man did with nostalgia what every other brand has struggled with. They lured us in with the promise of returning villains and heroes, but in the end they packaged a very wholesome film with a very tough but powerful message, finding the best and even the worst of people, and learning to forgive those who have wronged you. No Way Home is well deserving of Best Picture, and honestly for me it gets that title. Outdated and archaic award shows be damned. Seriously, screw the Oscars and all the others. We never needed them, and they're painfully, obviously rigged. It's literally just follow-up screen time for all the self-inflated... Alright, moving on. If The Matrix had released before Spider-Man, it is likely that it would have been received a lot better. Granted, Ghostbusters Afterlife is also worth mentioning, as also using nostalgia properly. Though, mind you, I missed my chance to see it, so I'm going off what other trusted sources have claimed. My point still stands that No Way Home ruined expectations for The Matrix. Not that it's in any way Spider-Man's fault. Someone obviously really wanted the palindrome release date, and clearly the market research team failed to push for an earlier or later release. Seriously, 2 or 3 weeks after Spider-Man might have gone over better. But why? Yes. Let us now move into the analysis. First, a word from my sponsor. I don't have any. Okay, so The Matrix 4 is a retelling of the first Matrix. It's not a rehash or a reboot, but this didn't bother me as much. Consider who the enemy is for a moment and realize that an evil AI faction would most certainly try the same thing again with slightly different tweaks. While on the one hand it is easy to bash the writers for lack of originality, consider the ramifications of how that would affect the lore of The Matrix. The machines only have so many plays because, well, they're machines. They only know their own programming, and Matrix doesn't quite confirm if they are as sentient as they appear. For all we know, the Matrix was in fact created by man to originally be a caretaker program that evolved into what it is. Anyway, so the machines are running the same playbook because they really don't know any better. This time they play it more close to the truth, which was a brilliant play if you think about it. The most effective lies are often laced with truth, and the closer the lie is to the truth, the easier it is to convince people. So once again, Mr. Anderson is stuck in a dead-end job with no hopes of anything in the same routine over and over. Previously, we're introduced to our new ambitious protagonist watching a replay of the opening Matrix scene. We then see Neo's old apartment introducing new Morpheus, and then, of course, the moment of the big reveal. Because the machines played so close to the chest with the truth, Neo is more resistant and less curious about the red pill at first, until his boss, misreading the situation, tries to have him killed. The machines then try their ploy about everything he's seeing as just being a vision, and of course it fails. Neo is brought out of the Matrix yet again and promptly taken to the new Zion, or Io as it is known. From there we are introduced to the new tension between Niobe and Bugs, as well as the revelation that Neo and Trinity sparked a civil war with the machines that ended in a draw. What is this, soccer? From there, Neo works to bust out Trinity and save the day. Overall, the plot is about B- passable standing on its own. Yes, it's a retooling, but it doesn't try to tell you it isn't. In fact, this very meta-heavy film warns you ahead of time that this movie didn't even want to exist in the first place. But you know what? It does exist, and it's telling you it's time to move on from the nostalgia era. But because Spider-Man and Ghostbusters showed it can be done right, you're a bit hesitant, and that's understandable. Nostalgia isn't bad in of itself. Too much of it, however, is. Before Neo red pills again, he and his boss have a very important scene together. It's pretty much a summarization of the Warner Bros. Pitch meeting, in that it was more of a, we're making this with or without you. It's likely that this movie is more of a message for film producers to move on from nostalgia than it is shaming for you liking nostalgia. In fact, I don't think this film was trying to shame anyone for such at all. There's nothing wrong with liking nostalgia, provided it's not all you like. The next poignant scene is the poorly rendered bullet time sequence with Neil Patrick Harris and Neo. There are some exchanges in the dialogue about manipulating people with emotions and banking on feelings. This, subconsciously, could easily come off as a personal attack against, well, the entire human race. We are emotional creatures, and sadly a lot of us these days are slaves to our emotions. If there is anything I have observed consistently about humans, it's that 1, they are insecure and hate being called out, and 2, even more so, humans hate having their insecurities, like being manipulated through emotions, so blatantly called out. I do believe that also played a part in the Matrix's bad reception, but in time will be looked back as a necessity. The final point of note is the ending. A lot of people were fooled thinking that Trinity is now the one, because she could fly. Yet, at the very last shot, we see both of them flying on their own, confirming what we always should have known, that the two of them being together make up the one. If you recall the original Matrix film, Neo would have died without Trinity, and she without him. And even though he has the connection to the machines in the program, she's the one who helps get him to where he needs to be to save the world. Without Neo, Trinity fails, and without Trinity, Neo fails. This is what it always was from the beginning. The last conversation with Neil Patrick Harris, Trinity, and Neo is also one final insult to the audience. No, I don't mean an insult in the common sense where studios and actors are stupidly blaming fans. I mean in the genuine wake up and smell the Earl Grey. Neil Patrick Harris straight up calls us sheeple and follows it up with what he was talking about, feelings and emotions and stuff. The insults to the audience in this film aren't meant to make you feel stupid or inadequate, but rather to tell you to bluntly look in the mirror and ask yourself, is overdosing on nostalgia really what you want in life? Is rehashing the same shit over and over really what brings your happiness? No, it isn't, and that's why you appropriately lashed out at this film. Only time will tell for sure if The Matrix ages well. In the next 5 to 10 years, I could watch it again and realize that it wasn't that great. I could also be completely vindicated. One thing is for certain, our media needs to tone it down with the nostalgia bait. Part of what made our movies and entertainment overall good was the introduction of new and original works. The Expanse is a good example of why film and show producers should start pulling from lesser-known authors and converting their material into more widely consumed mediums. Of course, this comes at a catch. You have to try and stick to the original source material. Lord of the Rings was successful because it didn't deviate too heavy from the original works. In fact, it was really what was cut out of the Jackson trilogy that either couldn't be done for the lack of technology and money, or it just would have bored audiences in the early 2000s. Point being, if show producers are serious about keeping entertainment fresh and relevant, then start investing in original works. And yes, as a struggling author myself, I have personal stake in this too. But I also know of other works that deserve big budget adaptations. This also enriches our pop culture with more variety and less rehashes of the same. While I am aware that most stories are typically rehashes of other stories, that doesn't mean we can't try to make them new with new faces and ideas. At the end of the day, all stories are derivative of the first ever tale told around a campfire, and sometimes it is necessary to retell an old classic to make a modern point. Looking forward to the idea exchange in the comments, and remember, don't be a penis. That's really just a fancy way of saying don't be a dick. It has nothing to do with the actual genitals.